All right. Well, welcome to the show. Typically, I start these with asking people like their why for doing HYROX. Normally, like what's the motivation, the reasoning behind it. And I know you've not done a HYROX yet, but like through your sporting life, what has been the main driver, the main motivator for you?
Yeah, strange. When I was obviously my rugby background, I had this long-term vision from a very young age as a mid-teen, just to start for the British and Irish Lions. So, like for those who are just purely into fitness and know very little about rugby, the Lions is just every 4 years they'll pick the best players from Wales, Scotland, Ireland, and England, and you'll go and play traditionally one of the better teams in the world in the Southern Hemisphere away from home. And it's like typically a 10 match tour and it finishes with a 3 match test series. So I was fortunate to go on two tours. That was like a huge goal for me. So I always had this carrot that was dangling. And that's what gets you out of bed on every tricky day. We're human beings. So there's days you wake up, you're like, the last thing I want to do is train today. And you say to my brother, it's not about training when you want to train. It's about training when you don't want to train. That's like, that's when the real sort of champions kind of come through. I don't want to train all the time, but you just drag your ass up and you get it done because you know it has to be done. And so I had this carrot dangling in front of me, and I did it a couple of times, and it was the last game I ever played. I went home, and it was really weird. That flame just went. Played for the Lions twice. Both tours were relatively successful. I was 28, and I was like, I've done it, and I just wasn't motivated to carry on. So I do feel that you do need. I had quite a strong motivation, which got me through a lot of tricky periods. Like anything in life, isn't it? It's always hard if you want to be good at something. It's going to be loads of hurdles, and there has to be a deep intrinsic desire to want to do those things. Otherwise, you're just going to give up. Ultimately, that's what you're going to get. So you need a strong purpose, and a strong reason. I had that from rugby, which is what kept me going. So I guess it's probably quite a key question now. People go, what's your purpose now? And it's changed drastically. I've got three young kids now, and without sort of taking this to a deep place. Like I was on a train the other day, and there was a lady. No offense to anyone who was in this position, but there was a lady who was very overweight, and she couldn't walk down the train aisle. I looked at that and I remember thinking, I never want to be like that. I need to be around for my kids as long as I possibly can, or give myself the best chance to be around. Nothing's
Mhm.
guaranteed in life. So I train now for health and longevity because I want to live a really high quality of life. And even though I'm 36 and I've had 8 operations, not compared to HYROX athletes now, but compared to the general population, I'm probably fitter and move well than 99.9% of 36-year-olds.
Mhm.
Even though I've been through the mill playing rugby, I can still move very well and pain free considering what I've been through and compared to the average person because I know what I'm doing. So I train for longevity now and I want to be an active dad, an active granddad. And I've realized, and you'll know, like all the research that's emerging is when we say strength, we're not talking powerlifting. We just need a reasonable level of strength for everyday living. Strength and aerobic ability are paramount for that, which is why I've started integrating and I've enjoyed some HYROX style training because you kill both those birds with one stone. So that's kind of my motivation now. I see my kids, I'm like, I want to set a good example to them and I want to give myself the best chance to be around for as long as possible. So that's kind of where I am in my training journey. I don't lift the crazy weights. I don't really train specifically for power anymore like I used to. But it's much more around the sort of functional strength abilities and then the aerobic abilities, just so I can be around. So I'm not sure if that was the answer you expected. It's not really a
That's
performance
great.
goal that I'm chasing, but much more of a lifestyle goal that I'm chasing now.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it's one of them things like uh to be able to be around for your kids and play with your kids and feel good on a day-to-day basis. One of them things that's easy to forget. And then as soon as you lose that through an injury or illness or something, it's like, oh yeah, that is actually the most important thing.
Well, I didn't get it until like before you have kids. I don't expect listeners, if they haven't got kids, to understand. I used to be that player when there was guys I play with and they brought their kids on after the game. I was like, what are you doing? Just leave them in the stand. What are you bringing your kids on the pitch for? And like now I'm like, oh my gosh, I totally get it. Like, because you think your life is important, but when your wife goes into labor, and I've gone through this 3 times, you drop everything like a sack of potatoes. And that's the only thing that's important in your life is your wife and that baby. And I think, yeah, having that perspective now and wanting to be healthy and be around for them is a massive driver for me now. Massive
Yeah.
driver. So yeah, family is a most important, and probably was one of the reasons I finished playing my rugby career, because I wanted, you're very selfish as a, I'm sure there's a lot of HYROX athletes and competitors listening. And it's fine. It sounds wrong to say this, but you have to have this. You've got to be very selfish if you want to be good at something. A lot of things have to come second,
Mhm.
and it's exactly the same with being a rugby player. When I have to sleep, when I have to eat, when I have to train, travel, family comes second. And it came second for all my career. But there came a point where I was like, I've achieved what I want to achieve. I don't want to put the family second anymore. So, I mean, it's a trait you need. You have to be very selfish. You can't be good at everything if you want to try and please everyone else. It doesn't mean you can't have time for family, by the way. Of course, there is a happy medium. But I'd lived a very selfish lifestyle, restrictive lifestyle playing professional rugby. And then for a long period of time now, I've been retired 8 years now. I've enjoyed putting the family first, and things can work around that. But if people are chasing performance goals and they want to be successful at HYROX, that's what you got to do. Like, and I support that. If that's your goal, that's your mission, and you've got a wife who can understand, or partner, whoever that may be, yeah, you have to be selfish. And that's actually a very good trait to have. To be successful, everyone has to have a level of selfishness, and that's just what you need to reach the top.
Yeah, yeah. I guess as well though, you also do need that support network around you, and I think I've heard you talk about that before, like the importance of the family and coaches and nutritionists and everything. Like it's not something that you do alone to get to the level that you got to, is it?
Oh, no way. Yeah, no way. Like that support, I'm lucky I got very close to my family, sports psychologist as well. Lucky
Mm-hmm.
become a very good friend, but I learned on him from a performance perspective as well. Agent was very close with, and then a couple of close mates. And you need that, because like it gets hard. There's times it gets hard, and because I'll be walking around like, well, I remember this. I used to walk around on a day off, perhaps on a Wednesday, and it would be like after a big international game, for example. And in Wales, like rugby is massive. It's hard to escape the rugby when it's on in Wales. I remember walking around, and I saw these builders working on a house, and they normally come from out the area. I've lived in the same area my whole life, so locals expect to see me. But these builders, I could hear them saying, "Oh, look, it's Sam." So they shouted out my name, and one of them shouted, "You live in the dream, live in the dream." Because he saw me walk my dog on probably like a relatively sunny, maybe early spring morning under March. And like they probably mean it as a compliment. But I remember thinking, poor, I've got a scheduled shoulder operation coming up. I've had to take painkillers just to get out and do this dog walk. The press have criticized me and slagged me off. I'm going away on tour for 2.5 months this summer. I'm going to be away from my family. Currently in quite a bit of pain. We lost on the weekend, so I'm getting criticized. I'm like, right now, this is not enjoyable. But people only see, like, it's
Yeah.
like HYROX athletes, right? People will see the finish line shot and a good time and looking pretty good. So people go, I'll do that. But I'm like, well, people might envy the destination, but they don't really envy the journey it takes to
Mm.
get to that point, you know? And,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that's where you need, sorry, to circle back to your question, that's where you need your support network, because there's lots of times when it's pretty dark and it's pretty miserable. And I said I disliked 80% of my career, only like 20%. Like, and I still stand by that. The 20% outweighs the 80% mine tenfold, and you do it for that 20% and that rush and those dopamine hits that you get when you win, and that's amazing. But a lot of it is not as easy as people think, and that's why I see a lot of similarities when I see people who are really good at HYROX. I'm like, they just relying on genetics for that. There's an
No.
enormous amount of work ethic that has gone into getting that time. You can think you're very fit, and this is where I'm not naive, and I don't just jump into HYROX. You'd be very naive to think you could just jump in there and just go like get a rapid time just from, oh, I got digging, it'll be fine. It's like, no, 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 you're not realizing you're paying it a bit of being a bit disrespectful there to the sport, So same with rugby, but you need that support network for people to pick you up off the canvas. Of course, you need to be very internally driven. You need a deep innate want to do something. And I get like a parent speak to me and they go, "Oh, my son, like, he's really good at rugby. What advice would you give?" He doesn't really like tackling, and sometimes he doesn't want to train, but he could be really good. What advice should I give? And I remember saying, "Do you want my honest advice, or do you want my classic advice?" She said, "Go on and give me honest advice." I said, "Okay, honestly, You're probably not going to make it. You need a support network, and you can give him a nudge, and a teacher can give him a nudge every now and then. But if he doesn't want it himself, deep down, he doesn't want it. There's so many hurdles, so many obstacles that are going to come in his way over the next 10 years. If he doesn't have that, he's not going to make it. So, number one, you need that. Really think about what you're doing it for. Is it a really strong drive? And if it is, then when you've got a strong network, support network around you, then you've got the team that you need to push you through. Because there's going to be times you have a little wobble. If you're internally driven, that's great. It's going to be every now and then, once in a blue moon, you're gonna have a wobble and people that you need to confide in. And if you've got those people around you, then get you back on the straight and narrow really quick and you carry on. So yeah, having really close people to support that innate drive as well is really important, because you're right, it certainly it can't be done alone.
Yeah, yeah. There's a really like nice community in HYROX, and I think part of that is because there's this like the similar people, and there's this general understanding of what it does take
Yeah.
to compete, and not everyone's like that. And so when you find your crowd, it's nice to come together. Just circling back to your why and your like original why, which was become Lions captain. Do you think that sort of goal is important for people if they want to get to the top, if they want to do really well in HYROX, for example? Do you feel like having that goal and that thing that you focus on every day is important?
Personally, yes. And like sometimes if your high rocks is just to be able to finish it, which for some people it is, then that's great. Like we're not talking everyone here needs to be going for elite 15. Like some people just love the challenge and it's something great to do. But for me, like I think it is only because, well, in rugby it is because, oh my gosh, the obstacles that are put in your way from social media criticism, written press, criticism, injury, time away from home, getting smashed around in training in the middle of winter, which nobody sees those sessions, contact multiple times per week. Like if you don't have a big goal, you are going to ask yourself, what am I doing this for? Like there's easier ways to earn a living. And I remember like playing one game and I got knocked out, concussion. I was under the stand and I remember getting I fractured my cheekbone. My eyelid was split like a curtain from north to south. So I was having my eyelid stitched back up by a surgeon. My head was throbbing, concussed. I mentioned fractured eye socket. I remember thinking, there's got to be easier ways to earn a living than doing this. You really question it. But then I had this like legacy and Lions thing in my head, and I was like, no, like I've got to do this. And I tell a quick story like about when my dad, I was 14, and he came home from work once. He's a firefighter, and he gave me a piece of paper, and he said, "Oh, Sam, just fill this out. There's 5 questions on it. It's for a colleague in work. His son's doing some homework. Or do whatever you want. I don't care." So it said name, age, sport, position, and ambition. So I just got a pen. I just wrote down name, Sam Warburton, age 14, sport, rugby union, position, open side flanker, which is the number 7. I was obsessed on that position. And then it said ambition. Now, I'm not saying I achieved this, but just the story as it is. On ambition, I remember I wrote down British and Irish Lions rugby legend. And I gave it back to my dad. He said, "What are you doing? You can't write legend. That's arrogant." So, but I said, "That's what I want to do though, Dad." And I think when I was in school then, like I was obsessed and about making that promise to myself, making it reality. My dad got me an official Lion shirt for that Christmas. I wore it everywhere, that shirt, red shirt, Lion shirt, number 7 on the back. I wore it everywhere. And then I put it back one day, a few weeks after, because I was fed up of being this pretender. My dad said, "Where's that shirt going?" It cost me a fortune. I said, "Oh, Dad, I put it away in the back of the wardrobe, and I'm not going to wear another Lions shirt until I wear the real thing." So sort of fast forward 10 years, and I used to train in the school lunchtime, just go running around late at night when I was growing up to be super fit, swapped all my sandwiches with tins of tuna for protein, and crisps were gone, and it was fruits for micronutrients. I was like my mates, like, I love your dedication, but wow, and I lived like a pro from a very young age. So when I got my first, what is called you make the starting 15 for the British and Irish Lions. 10 years later, at the age of 24, that was my best moment because I got that shirt. And that was like 10 years of hard work, resilience, and sacrifice. But I had that goal. I had that thing which just for those 10 years when it wasn't going well, or if somebody doubted me, or it was a tough training session, it was an injury, it was just this thing. Have I done that yet? Have I worn that number 7 shirt for the Lions? I haven't. I'm not stopping until I do it, you know. So for me, it was very personal. It was very important. It was personal to me, and that's why I think that flame went once I did it on the second occasion. And it was against New Zealand then. So back then, New Zealand were back-to-back world champs, you know, and no one gave us a chance. We had a good tour out there. I was like, I'm done. I'm done. I put so much pressure on myself emotionally, mentally, and physically, I guess, over a 14-year period. I just tapped out. You know, I'm happy I've done it. So that for me was very important because it was so hard. Professional rugby career, very hard. People see the 2 hours that you might play on a Six Nations game, which, you know, typically your big games can be like 8-10 million viewers watching those games. But, you know, you play for Wales 10 times a year for 2 hours, 20 hours. It's not even a percent of your annual life, you know, is playing for. It's just a fraction, but it's it's the 99% of what people see. So it's the rest of it is hard. It's hard. It's a very committed lifestyle. If you want to be good at something, there's a lot of things that you got to sacrifice. So I think that's why that flame went once I'd done it for the second time. But for me, that personal goal was very important, and people I've spoken to have it might be very different. Everyone's motivation is very different. I don't think one motivation is right. Some people is prove people wrong. Some is financial. Some might be similar to mine. But there's no right or wrong. People get up for things in their own ways. But yeah, for me, that was very important.
Did you use a visual reminder or anything like that of that goal for those like 10 years from 14 to like 24? Or was it just always like just permanently something in your head?
Yeah, I guess it was. It was something in my head. So like I had like I've been playing. I remember being like 16, 17, 18, playing for my school, you know, and we playing. I'm from Cardiff in Wales. We playing like a school from, I don't know, London, for example, or somewhere else in Wales, and the boys were like, "Oh, they're Saracens are another professional club. Oh, they're number 7 is in the Saracens Academy." You know, you're nervous about playing against him, and I sort of knew that. I was like, well, if I'm going to play for the Lions at number 7, I can't just be the best number 7 in my school or in Cardiff or in Wales. I got to be the best 7 out of everybody across these 4 home nations, and not just my age group. Could be 8 years above me, could be 7 years below me. Over a 15-year age range, I got to be the one best guy. So this guy who's playing for Saracens, he ain't getting in my way. And without sounding arrogant, I kind of knew that. I was like, well, you know, I'm like 6'3" and pretty strong and quick, and was a good athlete. You know, I always did pretty well in athletics and things. So it's like I'm lucky that I'm a relatively good athlete. But I thought, but way more important than that, I was like, this guy doesn't eat like I eat. He doesn't train like I train. He doesn't have my mental toughness. He doesn't have my deep desire. So I hate to say it, lads, but he can't be as good as me. He just can't, you know? And this was just this strange belief I had. It might sound quite arrogant. And I remember when I read a review on my autobiography once, and because you worry about what people are going to think, and they said I started reading Sam's book and I thought he was really arrogant when I thought he was actually quite a down to earth guy. But when I finished it, I understood. You know, I understood, and I just think like we can act humble, but inside in your head, you have to back yourself. You know, like you can't be at the start line on a HYROX and be thinking, oh, I just want to survive. You got to be thinking like, no, it's not just the 1 week that has got you here, preparation. You think this, for some people, they'd be like, this is 6 years of prep. I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
I'm going to rip this up. Like you might find it hard, but you have to have that belief and that positive mindset, which others might think is arrogant. But to be successful, you have to have it. Look, none of those guys on the top stage, none of those guys on the top stage go into that thinking, oh, I don't know if I should be here. They're all thinking, damn right I should be here. No one trains like I do. No one's got my toughness upstairs. Like that, that's just the normal mentality you have to have. And I think like for me, when I was in like a Lions dressing room, that's normalized, that mentality. You think, am I being arrogant here? But when you see the other guys just prowling around the dressing room, is then the best place to be, because you're like, oh my God, how do we lose? When we've got like the 23 fiercest, most domineering, dedicated, driven individuals in one room. It's like, oh my God, how can we lose? It's like actually a very empowering thing. So I imagine like, you know, for people to train with, you know, even someone like yourself, like I bet they might. It's not daunting as they think. It's actually you're there going, no, come on, you can do this. Like this is what you know, and it's supportive and it's energetic. Like that's what you top athletes bring, you know. So it's not. I think people think it's an intimidating thing, but actually, no. You get around you. That's why like being around a good gym is important, or being around good people who train like you is important because you need people who are doers who can do it who tell you can do it, you know, and then you'll be able to get a lot more out of yourself than you actually might think. So, yeah, if anyone's listening to this, you know, you've got to surround yourself, probably to your support network group, surround yourself with people who believe, bring loads of energy, because you'll be surprised in how much extra you'll get out of yourself. Very important.
Yeah. Was there also like in that instance where like against the Saracens guy and I guess against like the top teams that you played, was there also like an excitement to play against people like that and teams like that because it is a test and this is like this is going to test me? Like you don't want the easy games necessarily, do you? And
Yeah.
I think maybe that sometimes is something that the top sports people like they have an excitement to test themselves against that, whereas others might be like, I'd rather an easy day, you know.
Yeah. And look, and if you feel like the latter, then maybe the elite sport's not for you, and you realize, oh, you know what? Maybe I just fit into the enjoyment, general population side of things. And maybe because not everyone's a competitor, you know, and not everyone has that competitor mindset, and that's okay. Like, look, if I do a HYROX, I ain't being there as a competitor. I'm gonna get nowhere near those top guys, and I know that, but I just do it for the enjoyment of it because I enjoy training, and it'll be a challenge, you know, and I enjoy that, you know. I'm not going to be a competitor. Crikey, I'm nowhere near that level. I'm not aerobically gifted. I was those guys growing up when I do the pentathlon, do good at high jump, good at 200 meters. I can throw a discus. I do the 1500, boom, fell out of that top 10 like like so quick. I'm not a runner. So the running is very I see these jacked up guys doing it and I'm like, oh, they've underestimated the running. Like, you know, I'm like, you can't do that. And that's why I'm not naive. I'm not naive. So people go, oh, Sam, do a high, or you know, we saw each other in Cardiff and people say, Sam, do a HYROX. Look, I'm like, look, I look quite lean. I look like I'm in shape, but I won't be able to perform as well as you think. You know, there's a big difference between having an engine and looking like you've got an engine. You know, so I'm not stupid like that. Yeah. So yeah, I made sure I haven't made that mistake, which I'm sure you've seen plenty of people make that mistake.
Yeah, yeah. How did you? What was your impression of the Cardiff event?
Yeah, well, I went there. I do. I'm with Built for Athletes, so similar to yourself. You know, a great brand that I've been introduced to over the last 12, 18 months. They obviously they're there on at the HYROX event as a partner, and I went along a little bit naive to be honest. I knew HYROX was big, and I like it. I way prefer it compared to CrossFit because I don't know. I'm really big into training, and I don't believe technical lift should be lift under fatigue. And I'm talking Olympic lifting. You know, like extreme, like power in its extreme and in its true expression is not a fatigue thing. Now, like there is power under fatigue. You know, like you like burpee broad jump. There's power under fatigue for sure. But I've always been massively against lifting Olympic lifts under fatigue because I think the number one priority in a training program for anybody is injury prevention. Because if you're injured, what's the point? Like you can't even train. So, but that's where I really enjoy HYROX is because the level of skill required to complete it is a lot easier than other forms of like endurance events. Now, I don't mean that disrespectfully. I see wall balls done horribly wrong. You know, and that over 100 reps can cause problems. So you do need that. There is obviously always an element of skill. But I think it's I mean, you can get injuries from just huge spikes in volume, which people will experience, and that's just because they've just been a little bit naive going into the event. If you're asking your body to do something that it's got nowhere near before, it's going to break down. It's just simple. It's physios will tell you when you get injuries, it's either because you're undertrained or you've got done way too much volume and you're overtrained. So and your body gives up for those two, pretty much for one of those two reasons. It's either deconditioned to do what you're asking it, or you've trained too hard and you've just pushed over the edge. That's kind of really where most injuries come from. But what I love about HYROX is that as long as you pay it respect and you do enough work, it's applicable for so many people.
Yeah.
to complete, to push a sled compared to doing a clean and jerk is a very different exercise. You can push a sled for 5 meters very dynamically and get great power benefits, and you similar to a clean and jerk, but it's much the amount of time it takes you to do a clean and jerk to get the technical competency that you require for the power transfer. It takes a lot more time than just asking someone to push a sled for 10 steps as fast as hard as they can, you know. So that's what I like about HYROX, is that the level of injury risk is dramatically lower than any other endurance event that I've seen, and that's why I think people enjoy it a little bit more, you know. So that's what I do really like about the concept of HYROX, because it kind of stays with the philosophy of injury prevention should be number one, and that's why I think they've got it very right. It's still, I'm not saying you can't get injured during HYROX, of course you can, but that's why I think that's probably one of their USPs compared to other events as well.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why it's grown so well, and like why they can, sell out something like the Principality Stadium for an
amazing,
event.
Wasn't it? What an event!
Yeah.
And I knew HYROX was big, but I didn't realize how popular it was until I got there. And that sort of set that'll still be a catalyst for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people in Cardiff didn't realize how big it was. They turned up, give it a go, even as a spectator, as a participant. They all walked away being like, that was awesome. What an event. It's turned into a massive thing, and the growth of HYROX has been enormous over 5 years. And I'm glad because it's a good event. It's a good event. It preaches good things. You know, all good trainers will say you need to be able to, like, for example, like a farmer's walk. If you can carry weight and walk, and you can push sleds, and you've got a good aerobic ability, you've got good strength level, you're going to be a pretty well-functioning, healthy human, you know? And it kind of preaches all the good kind of movements that a human needs to do. So I do like it for that reason. It was a brilliant event. They did a phenomenal job. What was your impression? Because you've obviously been to HYROX. I know it was a slightly different course, people were saying, compared to before. Was it as good as you thought, taking it to a big stadium, or do you think it's better if you don't take it to a big stadium and have it in maybe more of a HYROX ready facility, like in London, for example?
I guess it depends what you're looking for. Like it was awesome to be in that stadium, and it felt like, it felt like, I guess you felt many times, like playing rugby. But so to be able to compete in somewhere like that was amazing. As a pure like HYROX course, it certainly wasn't like the quickest, for example, because there was a lot of corner turning, if you like it was the 3-lap course, and like the flooring that was put down wasn't optimal, I wouldn't say, for running as fast as you possibly can. So from that perspective, somewhere like London XL is better, really, but that's just a boring, dull convention centre. So it depends what you want. If you want the fastest time possible, then Cardiff isn't the one. But in terms of like just being able to compete in the stadium, I loved it. Yeah. Can you see yourself doing one?
Yeah, well, I've been asked to do one because I found out about it a little bit short notice. I thought, I'm not going to be able to turn up and do that, because I think, because I'm very cautious, because I've worked in the sporting world as a player. I've worked in it since as a coach, and like, for example, if somebody comes back from injury, maybe I'm too cautious. If somebody comes back from injury in rugby, you cover, just say, 7-8 kilometers a game. And that's obviously multi-directional, up and off the floor, acceleration, deceleration, very different, just like an 8K run. But say you're coming back from injury, but you're fit to play, but you've only covered 5 or 6 kilometers in training. When you get to 5-6 kilometers in a game, they take you off, no matter how well you're playing, because the medics know, if we keep him on this extra 20 minutes, he gets to 8K, we've spiked him by 2K, he's going to pull a calf. He's going to tear his hamstring, tear his calf, or ask his body something he hadn't done before. So I was asked to do it, but I'm like, if I do that now, maybe it's because this is where my body has been trained. If I suddenly give myself this huge spike in volume, I guarantee you I'm going to pull something. And that's going to just be embarrassing. And oh, Sam, you got injured as a rugby player, got injured doing HYROX. This guy's made of glass. So I'm like, I'm thinking they've Built for Athletes have said, oh, what about like London? So I was like, oh yeah, that'd be quite cool to give it a go. It gives me obviously gives you loads of time. I've got things like juggle work-wise, 3 kids, so I can train for it. But like, yeah, no, that'd be good. But I just need plenty of time just so I can get enough volume in to my legs. So when I do it, I probably won't do it that quick, but I'll complete it and I won't be walking away with a torn car, you know? So like
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
like that would be like my goal. Just like do it without getting injured, you know? So yeah, I think I will give one a go. It would be a cool challenge. It was great. I did it. A couple of the boys represented my fitness company who did it when we last went, which is great. But they're like in their 20s, they're ripping it all the time. They were ready to go. I'm like, yeah, I haven't really voluntarily ran for 5 years, so I need to probably start do some running before I do it. So yeah, I've got a treadmill in the house now, so I sort of bought a treadmill. I'm doing sort of 1 kilometer intervals. I'm doing some longer runs. So I'm sort of doing my due diligence. So when I get there, I'm not going to be hopefully too might be naive saying this. Hopefully, I won't be too shocked, and at least I'll be semi prepared for what might be coming.
Nice, nice. Okay, look forward to seeing it. Let's shift a little bit from HYROX. Like you've done, you had a captains podcast that you ran for a while. Spoke to a lot of big names on there. Was there anything that like stuck out to you from any of those conversations? Any traits that you took away from the people you spoke to, or any like particularly memorable conversations that you had there?
Yeah, I mean, like from like meeting top sports people in rugby, and since you meet people whether it's in your world or football or tennis, whatever. And the thing I sort of realized is like, what's the number one common denominator with all sort of those successful people? And the number one thing I think is that resilience. It's that ability for people just to like relentlessly just keep going no matter how hard it gets. I don't mean like how physically hard it gets. Like if it's a high or something, yeah, that of course that's hard. But it's the people who kind of get to like a tough moment in life and just realize that you get to that tough moment. There's two ways you look at it. You either go, oh, this is the end. This is as far as I can go. Or you look at it and go, this is when everyone else would give up. I'm going to get over this hurdle, keep going. And just from work ethic and resilience alone, you beat the competition just because you just hang in there way longer. And the longer you hang in and the longer you pursue something, whether it's in life or whether it's in fitness or in sport, the more people you beat just from resilience, because people just don't stick to it that long. They just give up, you know? So, like, that's probably the number one thing I've realized is these people just have this ability to just keep pursuing that goal for a long period of time. And eventually they just last man standing. So that's kind of the number one trait I kind of realize. You speak to these people, and that's the sort of the shared common denominator you have is just they're like, yeah, they're resilient guys. They just relentlessly keep going. They're happy to seek help. They do all those things to continually improve and get good people around them. They have a goal, all those things. But my God, they don't give up. They
Yeah,
don't bloody. They're stubborn, resilient individuals. And I think, and I'm sure you've probably seen it in athletes. Like, that it's like if you don't have that resilience, you're done. You're done. And that's kind of similar. I kind of think back to that conversation I had with that mother. I'm like, he's got to really want it because if he ain't resilient, he ain't doing it. Sorry, like you can't hold someone's hand through this in life. Like you need to have a little bit of get up and go yourself. And sometimes you need all those things around you, but you got to do it for yourself. Like no one's achieved success by just unless you've been born into a millionaire's family, and even then, like those people are pretty unfulfilled because they haven't had to earn something. Like that pursuit and that feeling of earning something and putting in like effort. I remember my granddad said it to me, and like I kind of realized it's true. Like I was a teenager growing up, and I used to panic about things, and it's like, oh, and he was like 85 towards the end. He's like, you worry about the wrong things in life. It's like, what do you mean? He's like, I'm 85 now. You see, it's not until you get to the end, you look back and you think, oh my God, if I had 50 years more of life now, I'd live it so different. And he always used to say when I used to stress about exams or a rugby game, he'd be like, what you put in life is what you get out. And I sort of was like, I'd give that a go. I'd revise really hard for an exam, and guess what? I'd do quite well. I'd train and prepare really hard for rugby, and it's like over the long term, like it's not immediate, these things overnight. But over time, you get the reward. I remember thinking, bloody hell, he's right. Like, if you apply yourself to something for a long amount of time, you'll get it back. The success will come. And it's just telling us, and look, there's downs along the way as well. There's never an upward straight trajectory that you go on towards any way of success in life. no matter what you're doing, business life, athlete, whatever. But if you do put in the work, it comes back. And you'll have these moments of success and you go, there it is. That's what I deserve because I put in that effort, and it's that sort of delayed sort of gratification, really. And I think that's one thing that I probably was quite lucky that I learned that from a young age. So, and I am a massive believer of that. I think you get what you deserve in life over the long term, when it comes to, like performance in particular performance. No, I'm not talking health. I mean, I've met people through charitable things, which some very unfortunate things happen. But I mean, when it comes to like performance or trying to build something, physical, like yeah, you get out what you put in, and I definitely feel that that's been true in my example anyway.
A lot of the elite athletes that I speak to on here, like people are interested in like fancy training plans and what one person's doing differently training to the other. But the reality is that they've been doing it 20 years, in some way, shape, or form. And
Yeah,
they've
and
been
like
consistently doing a lot of volume and things like that
yeah,
year after
yeah.
year after year.
Oh, that's it. Like, and you got the macro example of that, doing it for the long term. And then like, like for somebody now, and I'm hoping this comes across their mind when they're next on a treadmill. If they're on a treadmill and they go, you know what, I'm doing my 1K intervals half a kilometer quicker today. I'm going to do them half a kilometer quicker just to push myself a little bit. And you look at that treadmill and you're on like 700 meters and you're like, oh my gosh, this is hard. And you got 300 meters left. Like, obviously, if you're going to cause injury, you feel your calf tweaking. Yeah, of course, you drop it down. Like, you got to stop that happening. But if you're not, if your body's not tweaking and you're really struggling, you're thinking, oh my gosh, this is hard. That's that moment when I think the resilient person finds a way to kick through that 300 and then take their rest. Or somebody will just quickly put their finger on the treadmill and go beep, 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 and they'll drop it all the way down and they go, oh, I need to get out of that situation. But I think now the winner sees that and goes, this is one of those small moments where I can just cut a corner, or nope, I'm in. I'm 100% in and I'm going to, and then you get there to the other side. All right, you might drop it down next rep if you just overreached a little bit, but hang in there for that rep. Because then, like, those small mental wins that you get, you come across these moments, whether it's on race day or in training. And the more you get used to overcoming those small things, the less often you have those thoughts when your body's telling you can't do it. Be like, no, I can. I know I can kick through this because you've got all these small bits of evidence from prior experience. That's what training's for, is to find out a little bit more about yourself sometimes. You can't do it every session, you'll burn out. But say I do a running session, there might be some sessions I go, you know what, I'm just going to do a casual, longer run here. I'm not here to push it. I'm just going to get a bit of volume, bit of zone 2, whatever. Might end up in zone 3. And then some sessions I go maybe once a week. I go, well, I'm going to just test my capacity and my limits here a bit, my threshold. I'm going to go for it a bit, and you find out a little bit about yourself in those sessions. I love it. So yeah, I think you got those sort of smaller examples, and then you got the examples of if you're willing to do that for a long period of time. My God, I say this, you do that for 5 years, you'll look back and you'll be unrecognizable as a human, like in your belief system, but in your physical ability as well, but not many people are actually willing to do it for that long.
Yeah.
That's the important bit.
And that's where it also comes back to your point about staying injury free and like, or as injury free as possible, so you can have that consistency over that period of time as well, right?
Yeah, I remember I was on the treadmill the other day, by the way. So I'm not saying you got to be this like alpha and like just troop through everything. I was on this. I was doing a run, and I did 8 1K intervals, and I was on the 7th one, and I felt my calf like it just didn't feel right. Now, the old me would be stupid, who wasn't probably when I just go, I'm just going to crack on through this. If I did at the same tempo, I would have pulled my calf and you set back. I thought, you know what, I'm still going to do my 8K, but I'm going to drop it down 2 kilometers per hour. Just get through it. Just so I just got it in the legs. So there's that. I'm not saying you got to be this like macho person who troops. You got to be smart at the same time. And I think the longer you've trained, the better you are at listening to your body. There might be some days that there's a difference between not wanting to train and then feeling like I'm tired. The best thing for me here actually is just to get a good day of nutrition in and let's just rip it tomorrow. Like, and I think the longer you've trained, the more intuitive you become with your training. That's why I sort of don't really like listening to like I have a schedule, but it's more how does this fit into my week? Not right, I have to do this here, 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 because life gets in the way, and sometimes you have to be quite adaptive. So yeah, I think the longer you train, the more you pick up that natural intuition on when to listen to your body, when you can push, and when you think, hang on, I need to I need to pull back a bit here because, like, as you say, it's all going to be centered around being able to train in a day or two's time and not force any injury.
Yeah, yeah. I've got to ask. I'm sorry. I'm sure you've been asked this 1,000 times, but you went to school with Gareth Bale as
Yeah.
well. Uh, could you tell, like, with him from a young age that he was going to be the successful footballer that he turned out to be?
I guess, yeah. So we were in the same classes in secondary school, played in the same football team. So yeah, like a very strange coincidence that we were sort of, in school together. People find it, it's people find it hard to believe that. There was one summer, I think I was named captain for the Lions, and he scored the winning goal in the Champions League final within like 2 weeks of each other. And then Geraint Thomas was a couple of years above us in school, the cyclist, and he won the first stage of the Tour de France in the same month. And
Wow.
everyone's like, flipping, hey, what's happening to this school Whitchurch in Cardiff? But I mean, at the time, you don't, when you're 11 to 15, 16, you don't know what a professional footballer looks like. You've never seen one before. But I look back now and I'm like, oh my God, it was so obvious. Like, he was if he played, it was a joke, no one come anywhere near him when he played at the school. If he played, just run down the touchline, score 4 or 5 goals, piece of cake, no one would touch him. But we just found it funny. We just thought it was funny. We just thought it was super quick. But I look back and like he'd do like the 1,500 meters in like an athletics competition. Like you do your local county athletics meets when you're teenagers in your secondary schools. And like he was racing against this kid who was like a Welsh champion, and he absolutely blitzed him. Gaz didn't do any athletics. He's with Southampton from a very young age. Absolutely blitzed him. But like we all found it really funny. But I look back, like, well, where he's lucky, he had a genetic ability which is quite rare, where he was very fast and very fit. Now, normally some people along that continuum, they end up at one end or the other. They're either like, oh, I'm an aerobic guy, or some people are like, oh, I'm a power guy, and they find it really hard to be aerobically good. That was me. I'm high up on the sort of strength power continuum, but my aerobic ability is very limited. Gaz had this ability where you don't see many people who are super fast and super fit. It's quite unusual that. And he was one of those guys. But he was driving down to Southampton with his dad after school 4 times a week from the age of like 8 or 9. So, I mean, the things you've touched upon about, what you put in is what you get out. He did that for like 8 years, plays for Wales at 16. And people are like, oh my God, he's only 16. I'm like, yeah, but it's like the whole overnight success thing.
Yeah.
That's like a 10-year journey no one's seen him do. So you look at his genetic ability, he had that. That's where he was gifted. But more important, like he put in the work for 8 years when 99.9% of teenagers wouldn't be bothered doing that. So you look at what he achieved and you think he absolutely deserved it. He put in the work, he had the genetic ability as well, but he did it for the long term, and it looks like it's a quick hit of success. But that was a dedicated guy who had a gifted body athletically. You look back at some of those anecdotal examples of what he achieved as a kid, and you're like, oh, no wonder he's one of the world's best footballers. So yeah, he was incredibly gifted at a young age, and it's probably in hindsight you look back and you go, yeah, no wonder
Yeah.
he made it.
Okay. Okay. You were known for your discipline, your composure. Um, so while we're on the subject of football, I know you're a fellow Spurs fan. So do you keep your discipline and composure when you watch Spurs 1-0 up in the Europa Cup final?
Oh man, there was tears in our family when they won that. My dad's from London, see, so he's a massive Tottenham Hotspur fan, and like I remember saying to my dad, like, "Well, I thought you said we're a big club, Dad. Like, when are we going to start winning trophies?" He's like, "Hang in there, son. Like we will win." So it was. Don't get me wrong, it wasn't the prettiest trophy that we've won, and it certainly wasn't the prettiest final, but I'll absolutely take it. And yeah, my dad is in tears. I was there with my twin brother. I was watching the game. My nephews have got no option but to be Tottenham fans. My 4-year-old boy's got about 5 Tottenham kits already, unfortunately for him. So he's got no option but to be a Spurs fan. But yeah, we were all massive Tottenham Hotspur fans. So I did give football a little bit of a go. Wasn't really naturally gifted as a footballer. I was good locally, but I was never going to make it as a career. But yeah, all huge Spurs fans. So weirdly, like, when you're playing rugby, I find it very easy to be composed. Like fans are going nuts around you. I know people are going mad at TV screens, but I always find it like when you're there in that heat of the moment, you're operating, you're doing a job, and you
Mhm.
see it black and white. You don't get wrapped up in the emotion of it. Sometimes you can in moments, which is important, and you need to lean on the emotion in some games. It's a big part of pro sport, but you need to have that composure at very top level. But then when I watch football, that goes out the window. Like none of that, those skills I had as a captain. Like I'm just there, like shouting at the telly. Like I just turn into that fan. It's really weird. I quite enjoy it though. Like I love just being a fan. So
Yeah.
yeah, no, weirdly, I'm not as composed when I watch football. I just turn into that sort of fan. But that's what's great about sport, you know. Like when you're performing it as a player, yeah, you see it very clearly. It's quite easy actually. But when it's a fan, I love getting wrapped up in the emotion of it, you know. So not quite as composed as a fan watching on the sofa in the stadium.
You briefly mentioned earlier when you were talking about the support network, you were friendly with a sports psychologist, and I've heard you say that I think it was when you became Wales captain, that you
Mm.
said you wanted, is it Andy McCann
Yeah.
to sort of come along? That was an important thing for you to have him come along to the World Cup. Um, like, why was that important for you? And were there any like main takeaways that you think you took from working with him?
Because I didn't know what I was doing really. And I think when you get given a leadership role, people automatically assume they have to know everything. Um, and it's a one-man job. Like leadership isn't a one-man job. Leadership is like how do you actually assemble the best team around you to service the team and to support the team. It doesn't mean rank or it doesn't mean authority. It doesn't mean you sit in a chair and point the finger. Like you have to like lead by example and get people around you who can help you do that. And you have to be quite honest with yourself and realize like what are your weaknesses. And that's where Andy, like we came up with this like leadership compass. So the first exercise we did was come up with a leadership compass to so I would live and die by this thing. And he said, what are the four traits that you want to demonstrate daily that you think will make you a good leader and a good captain? And we came up with it ourselves. And like two of them I come up with myself because they're things I'm naturally good at. And because that has to be on your compass because you need to be authentic. You can't just turn yourself into someone you're not. One thing was something Andy helped me with, and another one, he said, what's your non-negotiable? And that was the fourth one. So like just to whistle through them, like the first one, I said, right, okay, these are two that I'm naturally good at. I said, number one, I want to be the best pro, so it's professional. Um, I've sort of touched upon my mentality, my diet, my nutrition, my training, being on time, the example you set everyone. I want to be the best pro. That was quite easy for me to do that. Secondly, was be positive. I'm naturally a very positive person, not naively positive, but I always believed in my own ability and my team's ability, and that rubs off on the people around you. So, want to be professional. I'm going to be very positive. The third one was something Andy helped me with, and it was like people. I'm very introverted, believe it or not. Sometimes painfully introverted. A lot of this, people see me on the telly and they think I'm going to be really talkative when they meet me in person. I'm actually quite a shy person. Very, very shy person. I like to be on my own. Um, he said you need to develop relationships with people because you need to be a source of information. People need to find you approachable. They can come and speak to you if they've got a problem, if they think things can be improved. And then also to people, I had to get the right people around me, as I've mentioned. So like I get credit for some of my captaincy accolades. So I'm like, yeah, but there was a leadership team of six people who I leaned on massively, who had as much influence as myself. We had an amazing leadership group. That's why when you see individual sports people and they thank their trainer and their physio, and they're like, no, it's the team around you. And that's what you have to assemble when you're in a leadership role or you're in a role of responsibility if you're an athlete. Get the best people around you, and that's your core team. So having that was that came under the category people, professional, positive people. And the last one, which I say was a non-negotiable, is another P. They're all P's by coincidence. Performance. You have to walk the walk. Um, I think this in life, like you wouldn't ask somebody who hasn't achieved what they're preaching for advice. If you're a if you want to if you're a say in our world like if you're a PT or you're a personal trainer, I think you have. I don't agree with this thing, and you don't have to be in good shape to be a PT. You absolutely do. You have to demonstrate, or you can't tell someone you're going to coach them how to be HYROX and you can't be good at HYROX. You have to show people that you've walked the path that they're about to walk. And you know how it's done. You have, and it's the same in rugby. Your performance is your number one. If you don't walk the walk, you don't carry much weight. And it means you have to show people the way. You need to show them how it's done, support them, like mentor them to become as good. Don't be threatened by trying to support them to become even better than you. Like that's really what leadership is about. Um, But in any walk of life, you have to walk the walk. You got to put your money where your mouth is and show people what needs to be done. And that's performance in rugby. You've got to rock up every week. You've got to rock up on training. You've got to train well. You've got to rock up on match day. And you've got to play well, because that's ultimately how you get the respect of the people around you and your opposition. So, yeah, professional, positive people performance. I live by that every day, and I still use that compass now. Like when I'm doing things, I'm like, am I a positive influence on people around me? Am I being professional in my role? Have I got the right people around me? And am I walking the walk? And am I making sure that my individual performance is, it doesn't have to be like like from an athletic perspective, in your job role, is your performance in your job role, are you doing it to the best of your ability? Whether I'm commentating, whether I'm running a business, whether I'm competing, is my performance right? And if those four things are right, then in my belief, you're doing leadership properly. You're doing leadership properly. And that was where Andy was an enormous help. He helped shape this compass, and we continued, working on it. But he was a huge help to me. And I think if you're given that leadership role, people think it's a sign of weakness to go and look for help. I think it's a sign of being very self-aware, and of humility, to realize that you need people around you to help. And they tend to be, in my experience of guys who've led me, they're the best leaders.
Yeah, yeah, love it. How about during a match, or like when things are getting particularly tough? I often ask like HYROX athletes where their mind might go when things are getting tough and they're going through burpee broad jumps or something like that.
I
Is
can
there anything
imagine.
that is there anything that you tend to lean on for extra motivation, or has it always been that that I want to be a legend, a Lions captain legend? Has it always been that you've gone to, or is there other things that you've used?
Yeah, like when I was playing rugby, like I remember telling boys pre-match that you're going for a Six Nations, which is basically the European Championship in international rugby, and you got to think of a carrot when you're in that deep depths of pain and fatigue. And for me, like it would be lifting the trophy. Like when you get one trophy lift, people think, oh, that's the hard bit, getting there. But once you've experienced it once, it's like, oh my God, this feeling's amazing. So when it gets tough and you're on the floor and it's hard, what's the carrot? And it's like, it's that trophy lift, and it's that legacy that you want to leave behind, and it gets your ass back up off the floor and gets you back in the defensive line or working hard for your team again. And like, I always just had this like legacy thing in my head, like I always, if you want to achieve things that most people haven't achieved, you've got to be willing to do the things that most people aren't willing to do. So it's kind of like recognizing, as I sort of said before, recognizing those tough times and go, this is when the normal person gives up. I'm not normal. I keep going. And they're the sort of, I think, things that you have to just keep telling yourself in your head. It's not, I can't do this. I'm done. It's like, ask yourself, are you normal? Well, I ain't normal. I might not be the fastest, but I got digging, and I'm gonna keep going. And in rugby, like I certainly wasn't the fittest guy in my position. But the one thing I used to say was like, I didn't win fitness comps. But I'd like to think that I didn't give up. Like I just never give up, and that's sort of what I want to pride myself on. So I think you can't let those negative things come into your head. Well, they will come into your head. You've got to straight back them straight away. You've got to straight back them straight away. And that's where like positive self-talk really works, as long as you've put in the work beforehand. You can't just turn up and use positive self-talk with no evidence prior that you can do something. If you've put in the hard yards in training and you've done those things before, then you can lean in on those things, and you can do it. So you've got to build up your bank of evidence. It's like public speaking. You can't go out and do public speaking after never done it before. You get up on stage, it'll be pretty terrifying. You've got to slowly introduce yourself to the thing and do the thing. And once you do it enough times, you build up that bank. So like if it is burpee broad jumps, I bet the people who find it horrifically horrible are ones who probably never prepped for it properly before, and they do it, and halfway through they go, oh my God, what have I let myself in for? But if you know what's coming, when that pain comes, you expect it, and you know how it feels. So you got to experience the thing to be good at the thing. And as long as you do that, then that's when the positive self-talk works, because you've got the evidence that you can get through it.
Yeah, yeah. Do you if you think back through your career and like some of your best games that you personally played and some of your worst games, like performance wise, do you take anything away from that in terms of like how you prepared? Is there anything like in how you approached the game, how you felt during it? Like, did it feel easy during the better games? Anything like that you think back and like can
Yeah,
take away?
it's a good one. It's probably something I learned quickly as captain is that there's not like a one size fits all. There's some guys that were really relaxed pre-competition. Um, I was the opposite. I was like, I have to tick every single box in my weekly preparation. Don't like speaking to people on match day, shut myself in my room, get my food in, focus. Some people are very relaxed. And even like when it comes to recovery, I used to think everyone had to be like me. And that's probably a mistake I made when it came to leadership. And that's why I think like it takes people a little bit of trial and error to probably figure out what works. Then there's some games just to try and be a bit more relaxed. And I found I didn't have that edge. It's like I can't do that. That didn't work for me. I need to put myself on edge. And I found the bigger the pressure, or the more the pressure, or the higher the profile the game that I played in, the better I played. You know, it's like that fight or flight mentality, like that animal instinct. It's like fight, flight, or freeze, you know. And I challenge the players in the big games that like big players rock up for the big games. And when you're in those dressing rooms, we can either go into a corner and we can freeze, or we could flight and you don't come out, or we go out there and we fight like hell. And your competitors come out and they fight no matter how much pressure there is, because there's only a couple of options that you've got and you have to come out. You have to come out and go for it, you know. So I found I had to get myself on edge. I probably wasn't very good company to be around. The particular 48 hours for a test match. Probably wouldn't be able to get too much quality conversation out of me, but I found that was just personally what brought out the best in me. And then I sort of, you realize in rugby as well, where it's not an individual sport, obviously, everybody preps very different. But as long as they perform well, and they know what gets them to that level, then you do what you want. You know, you do what you want. It's very individual, the sort of preparation. So people don't really know. I'd suggest a little bit of trial and error. You know, a little bit of trial and error. You might do something and go, "God, that worked." And I really enjoyed that. And then you can just do that thing, but just do it deeper. You know,
Mm-hmm.
for me, and maybe that's why I retired a bit young. I was quite an intense person. I'm thinking, God, I can't do this for 15 years. I'm putting way too much pressure on myself. But I found if I didn't put pressure on myself and I didn't make it important, then I wouldn't get the best performance out of myself. So that's what I found personally worked for me. And that's it's quite draining as a pro, because you have this emotional roller coaster every week. You climb this emotional roller coaster from Monday to Saturday. You peak emotionally on a Saturday, and rugby you have to, and that's why I see a bit of similarities with HYROX. Like a lot of the time, I wouldn't be nervous about the game. I know I'm good at rugby, but that's I'm good at it. Of course I am. But what I get nervous about is what I'm going to have to put my body through, like the pain and fatigue I'm going to have to put my body through to come out the other side. That's what I used to have to get emotionally charged for. And we used to share a hotel with some of the Welsh footballers. I'm not saying football's easy compared to rugby, but definitely not. They run a lot further than us, but they were in a very different mindset. They were quite relaxed and jovial. And I remember thinking that, God, I was chatting to them. They were like, well, we play so many games. It's hard to be intense all the time. And rugby is such a physically confrontational game. You've got to be emotionally charged. You're not fighting in rugby, but you don't fight laughing. You know, you fight, you have to get yourself to a certain arousal to fight. And that's what rugby is. And, you know, like HYROX is hard, man. Like you got to get yourself to a certain state so you accept I'm gonna have to put my body through this. And it takes a certain, and that's why there's a lot of, I imagine, of pre-race anxiety, because you know what's coming and what pain you have to go through. You can never do it easy. And the fitter you get, the harder you push yourself. So it always stays hard. It never gets easy. But I think I just found that that's the kind of mindset I had to get into to get a good game at myself anyway. And there's only a certain, you can't do that every day. You know, I found I probably said there's probably like 10 emotional peaks I could get to a year, where I put a lot of pressure on myself, and I'd make sure I deliver. So you can't do that every session. It's so draining. But there's probably like, you know, if you're a competitive athlete, there's probably like 5 or 6 comps a year. You think, right, these are my peaks, and this is where I get to that emotionally uncomfortable state. But it actually will bring physically the best out of me.
Yeah, yeah, and that's very relevant for someone doing HYROX, where it is possible to race an awful lot per season, and even if you can physically recover from doing something like that, like the mental recovery or the mental willingness to go to that place too 100%. Many times in a season is
and it's hard to do. It's hard to keep getting to that emotional place. To put that much pressure on yourself is really hard. You probably think of the times where you competed at your hardest. If you did that every week, you just You at some point you just crash out, like
Yeah,
mentally just check out. Is you can only get to that extreme sort of emotional state at a handful of times, I find. Otherwise, it's just so draining.
yeah, yeah. I just want to ask you about like composure and dealing with pressure and things like that. In a HYROX, like bring it back to HYROX, there is a lot going on. Like you're pushing yourself, but you've got to remember what station you've got to go into. You've got to remember how many laps you've run. All those kinds of things. Um, and like staying composed and keeping your head in the game is important. Do you have any tips around that sort of thing? Like, you've played in some of the biggest rugby games like ever. How did you deal with that side of things?
Yeah, again, this Randy McCann would be handy, and it's a lot simpler than you think. But I have this, and in a nutshell, like breathing and focus, because that's what people lose. They lose focus, and the quickest way to regain focus is to focus on something very minute. So like or very concentrated, like so breathing. I remember there's this game. I remember feeling very anxious, unusually before this one game, and Andy would coach me to you sort of breathe in through your nose, and as you breathe in, your stomach comes out. You think when you breathe in, you need to fill up your lungs and your chest comes out, but you need that deep breathing. So you breathe into your nose and your stomach comes out, so it feels like it's going deep, And I visualize green coming in through the nostrils, infiltrating my lungs, and spreading out into my bloodstream. Then when you breathe out, I'd sort of visualize the red, which was almost like the red stress being sucked up my blood into my lungs and pumped out my mouth. Then I do that like 5 to 10 times. Then you suddenly realize I'm focused again, and nothing goes away. But if you're like, when you make a poor decision, it's because you're not focused. And I was chatting to one of the All Blacks, so New Zealand, historically the best team. They're actually the most successful team in sport in history of any sport, from a win percentage ratio. I was chatting to their captain, and I asked him similar things like, "Oh, these are things that I did. What did you do?" And they were coached that during a game. So when you get like a break in the game or a moment where it's, just say if it might, I'm presuming if it's a HYROX, it might be like in a 1K. But when there's a break in a rugby game, he said we were taught to do this breathing, look at a seat far away in the stand, and just stare at that seat for 10 seconds and focus on your breathing. And you do that for 10 seconds, and you come back round, and suddenly you just got more clarity, and you just calmed yourself down. And that I didn't really have to do that too often. There's a couple of times I thought, oh, I'm just unusually anxious for whatever reason, and I just sort of just focused on my breathing, and obviously it helps you recover as well. And then you just got a bit more clarity of thought. But that's how I sort of found that as long as you do that, you might have to revisit that a few times. Like if you let it spill over way too far, it's really hard to recover from. So whenever you can, it's just trying to just regain that composure. It might be if you're doing a doubles and your mate is doing 250-meter effort on a machine, that's when you go, right, I'm focused on my breathing. You just do like 30 seconds, just breath work and just focus. And you just get back on, you go again. It just gives you clarity of thought. So I found that's something that Andy coached me. And it's the sort of thing, the more you do it, the better you get at it as well. And you just find, crikey, I can reduce my heart rate pretty quickly here. And my perceived level of stress and pressure just comes down really quickly when you sort of get quite good at that. So they're things that I was coached to do, and I found that I got a lot of benefit from that when you're in those big pressure moments under extreme fatigue as well.
Yeah, yeah. Do you have a favorite sporting moment that you've had for your lifetime?
Yeah, it was probably the last game I ever played, coincidentally, and it was the Lions played New Zealand. So New Zealand were back-to-back world champions when we played them for the British Irish Lions. And we went to New Zealand. They hadn't lost at home for something ridiculous. I think it was like 8 years or something. Nobody thought we had a chance. But it was a lovely moment at the end of the game. You got like the two best teams in the world going at it for a 3-test series. We drew. We lost the first game, won the second game, drew the third game in quite dramatic fashion. But it was lovely because I think it's what sport is about. I mean, I could pick a selfish moment where I won a trophy, but then this moment was nice on the Lions tour with New Zealand because we shared the trophy lift at the end. And I remember one of their senior players from New Zealand come up to us, me and the captain for New Zealand, and said, "Oh, should we get all the lads in?" We were like, "Yeah, go on then." So I called the Lions lads over. He called the All Blacks lads over, and there's this quite this very famous photo in rugby now, I guess sporting photo, modern day sporting photo, where it's just we've been smashing each other up for 3 weeks, and the tour's been built up for ages. It's a 4-year cycle, the line. So this tour was being built up for 4 years, really. And there's this lovely photo where it's just black All Blacks jerseys, New Zealand jerseys with a red Lions jerseys, and we're all mixed in with our arms around each other. And I'm like, that was a lovely moment to be part of, I guess, because you don't get that. And that's why, like, HYROX is lovely because everyone's so supportive when you're there. Like, that's what I like about it. It's probably the one thing that probably took me back. I thought it was just going to be like quite a lot of arrogant people maybe running around, bit of an ego test, but it wasn't actually a very supportive event, which is really nice. That's what I really liked about it. Like, because I'd say, look, I can't do HYROX. And everyone went to me, yes, you can. You can do HYROX. Oh, this is great. I just love the vibe that was there. But that picture when we're all mixed in, you don't get that in many sports. You can't imagine an FA Cup final in football and then Chelsea, Man United going, come on, lads, jump in, let's mix up and have a photo. Like it just doesn't. But rugby is a very supportive environment. And to sort of back that up, like it comes across very alpha and domineering, but a lot of people have come out in rugby with their sexuality because the guys from a men's perspective, obviously the men's game, the guys in that team are so supportive. Like it's actually probably the best environment to come out in because people just like love supporting the guys around them. And I think that came out in that picture. That's why I like rugby. It's a very supportive environment, very. And that's probably one of the nice sort of pictures from rugby is that these two teams on the world stage just gone at it, but at the end, they all have the utmost respect for each other because they know what each other has gone through to get to that point. It's like I'm sure all the top level men and women in HYROX, they'll respect every competitor because they know what they have done to get to that point, the journey they've been on. Same in all sport, but particularly in this example in rugby. So that was probably a very nice moment and fitting. It was probably the last moment of my career.
Awesome. Love it. Well, this has been amazing. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. If people want to follow you, find out more about you, what you're doing with your SW7 Academy, anything like that, and anything else I should have asked as well. Tell us all about that.
Oh, nice one. Yeah, I mean, fitness is my love and passion. I guess if it hasn't come across in the last hour, I think I'm pretty sure it might have come across in the last hour. But I mean, my life now just consists of I do a lot of punditry broadcast work with the rugby, which I love. But as you mentioned, I did start up my own fitness company, just online fitness company, and would love to open a gym with the same vision of just trying to sort of give the professional insights and access that I had as a player to the everyday trainer. And that's what I love doing. I love just preaching the truth, what gets people from A to B as efficiently as possible. And I love that. I love training. So that's what I do with SW7 Academy. That's the sort of mission I'm on there. So yeah, you can find me at SW7 Academy. I'm just Sam Warbs on Instagram. I got rid of X and Twitter. I just deleted that. I sort of found it wasn't as supportive a place. I like to be on platforms which I feel I can help people, and people want that help. And I love that through Instagram. We share stuff on TikTok as well with SW7 Academy. But no, thanks to mention. But yeah, fitness is a passion of mine. I started it off as just a bit of fun with my mate during COVID. And it quickly turned into a bit of a thing. So that takes up majority of my time right now. But because it's in the fitness world, I absolutely love it. And I love trying to help people, become a sort of better version of themselves. Because I think people surprise themselves with actually what little dose of training you need to actually become something great. Just got to hang in there for a decent amount of time. We both know there's no 6-week fixes, but if you want to make a lifestyle change and make small changes to your life, you can actually get dramatic improvements. And I love preaching that to people.
Love it. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for this. Really appreciate it. And I'll look forward to seeing you at HYROX sometime.
Yeah. And make sure you're not running against me because you'll absolutely blitz me. So I'll make sure to tell, well, I'll stay way away from you.
I might beat you to the sled push and then I think you'll do me.
Nice one, Greg. I'll see you at the next one.
Thank you.
Cheers.